top prop at 350 use. The order will be the Charming Betsy counterplan and then the Tech K.
Charming Betsy and then what?
The Tech K. I brought this down.
Yeah.
Is everyone good?
1 second. How do I need it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Caterpillar provides a Charming Betsy candidate by banning unilaterally curtailing of the United States military right to contract commercial software because it violates international law. And kicking the second plank that does the treaties, we're only going for the ban plank, but that's only key to that benefit. Drop the Caterpillar towards comedy over intellectual property that solves every existential threat. Fever 21, granted crucial structure head to China, Russia, India, alliances, Pakistan, Asia, Pakistan, intellectual property key, extend the rules of shaping information, knowledge, and innovation, address deploying competition, global pandemic, assuming all control of new, go into ways to dragon nature powers rapidly. Common law, public, and other rulemaking, vertical, comedy, competent, one like-minded, divine hazard, later rules on cyber, AI, engineering, power, opportunity, rulemaking, negotiation, differences, regulating, code, economy of the domestic block agreement rulemaking at the international level. 2 is proved the Caterpillar that severs domestic and is impossible because the Caterpillar bans playing unilaterally. 2 is permutation to vote that's impossible because the Caterpillar is mutually exclusive with the affirmative. It's mutually exclusive with the affirmative. You cannot ban the plan and do it at the same time, and that is key to generate the benefit because it violates our law. 2AC3 is that the Caterpillar you cannot do IP outside of the United States. That is irrelevant because cable will get cases 0 versus defense, and we kick the treaty plank anyways because that's not key to that benefit. 2AC4 was permutation to other issues. 1. Other issues fail. So when A, application over copyright is key to by Betsy and trade agreements, and that checks China. That's a Harvard evidence. B is strike down and deference. It perms ambiguous language causes courts to defer and strike down, and no perm tax in the 2EC. It's a reason to reject the permutation. Q is 21. Case where Betsy would have been invited to bear instead of panel thoughts action bay and gives deferred interpretation of view and interpret statute of Betsy. C. If normal means is specific, then the controversy is overturning Converse circumvention. The case is Chamberlain versus Skylick. Harvard 16. Most obvious conflict between domestic and international obligation. Purpose circumventing measure low entitlement circumventing infringing work in a case Betsy direct the courts Chamberlain v. Skylick. Overturning the decision gives companies monopolies, but they can sue any company for reverse engineering, which collapses data sharing and innovation in computers. Rand 04 is technology code determined which product Fendi could interpret and expand education market monopoly certification and absent co-optation during litigation development the set of development innovation projects and inhibit data transfer of the competition and innovation that causes resource overshoot extinction away 21 with that central less society it's reason for overshooting resource 20% good weight to be cut even time for long humidity levies farming energy biodetection trans health and other tech financial life computing enables the future of the state community. 2 we meet counterplan takes out of domestic and should. 3 counterplans only need to be function competitive and compete off of top specific terms. The permutation is intrinsic. A is logic. Any other standard of competition is arbitrary. Technical competition justified word picks includes ban the plan counterplans. B is neg ground intrinsic terms. Turning artificial offense obviate a benefit to justify word scramble perms that devolve into no negative fiat or model gives the affiliation but perms out on uncertainty that it's say no and turns they say no that's relevant because we kick the treaty plank. They say roll back durable fiat solved and it's relevant to the plank we extended. They say relevant to the plank that they extended. They say they can see the impact but it disproves decay. The 1 the impact and the internal links are not about technology but about trade blocks broadly deterring conflict and later we'll disprove their technology internal links on decay and our case. And 2 we had a separate impact about comedy and international cooperation which is distinct from the aft impacts. They say no trade impact conceded takes out the stuff above going for a separate impact. Okay. Attacking with attack rates causes extinction of blocks and a securitized dynamic competition arms racing with direct unfettered proliferation of militarized AI that's structurally far more likely to cause extinction than the aft scenarios. Unchecked AI will obtain global domination, turn off humanity, destabilize MAD, and create violent conflict that escalates from catastrophic failures. That's correct as evidence. Their only impact defense was by AI and 2-3 integration, not responding to any of the stuff above, so it drops out any new one-air defense. AI arms racing also forecloses efforts to stop integration that is bad. Concord at 22. Petro has been a machine that would be starting to war militarizing increasing corporate data autonomous function US automated launching nukes and you got with little data platform existing data data baby. Class would not account for rating or whether how would AI be trained to accept only be used twice president AI a single pixel enough to convince the asshole bomber dog country could fool AI or a terrorist might stand tricks in the starting path of the nuclear war. Independently trying to win the tech race, redirect AI development efforts to the military instead of the public good. That's Skolnick solves the inevitable it makes the foreclosure solving inevitable experts via info aggregation. Beginners 18. Because of exponential growth innovation progress has inevitable to be solvable tech requires laws to realize promises AI is feasibility analysis helps other fields air promotes balance liberation may be spawning beyond capacity without AI greater capacity may be catastrophe prevent worse after ability risk society use research to focus on serious gap technically and parallel benefits as well. That independently turns the app directing efforts toward beneficial AI is critical to avoid US hedge fund from healthcare and education collapse and climate change. That's a Skolnick evidence. All of that especially worrisome because winning the tech race is logistically impossible and because US and Chinese researchers are interdependent and the biggest AI developers have international partnerships. This is Skolnick evidence which was dropped. 2C1 was framework, counter-interlude, the net can dispute the desirability of the act's consequences or core justifications. 1. The net benefit is critical clash, creating a model debate where two ends are incentivized to research and contest the act's ideological assumptions and two ways must defend their political stances and inoculates debaters that are more reflexive and expansive thinkers, especially for policymaking, and avoids imaginary lock-ins which destroys any time for arts control. 21. Technically choosing public fully formed embedded in law at epistemic level, we have inclined to restrict to be vital importance, recognizing your state intellectual property practice from instruments and doesn't turn around more much more question. Think about ways we design policies that have a clear question about world harmony to be examined for political approach and change attention to first effects. 14% political possible to open up instruments require more flexible understanding. 2 are inter-terms after ground. 1 EC gets ground from both unique consequences and justifications. 3 is middle ground. They still get to weigh the affirmative, we just get links to their justifications. 4 no word pigs, those lose on theory, and are never so justification for the plan. 5 the K is predictable. It's a K of the tech race, which is what the athletes entirely about. Framing it for their standards. So 2C is an incomplete argument with no warrants. Right about any new one of your extrapolations. I'll preempt their stuff. They say if they say clash, no internal link, and plan focuses words makes teams. Or to watch accountability between mid terms. If they say fairness, 1 we saw fairness, if it's with the app, 2 they are worse. Their motto deletes all K debates since no epistemology is unique or causal by definition, which is far more radical. 3 is net ground. 3 is the net ground case. Our key function limited on the topic where linking nucleus is backward for disadvantages and teams only can vote for cross accountability. 4 if an impact first and last speech picking your imaginary you're all solved. 5 use inevitable speed, resource security, and should advise. 2C2's permutation to vote the perm fails. View this through the lens of framework. The app must defend its justifications. It means the perm is severance. 1EC has said that a reason for doing the plan is that it would help the United States stay ahead of China tech advances. That commits them to defending the idea we should take action to win the tech race, which quote erodes possibility for arms control. That's not about evidence. It means the alternative is the opposite of the app. They want to win the tech race, which is logic of arms racing. The alt rejects wanting to win. They are mutually exclusive. That's Skolnick evidence. Any inclusion of the app's arguments from logic supremacy alts are control period by heading to perception, making true cooperation impossible. That's not what is evidence. 2 3 was no link. I'll do the link debate here. 1 is a tech competition link. Their justification for expediting the contracting process is that the U.S. is engaged in a tech race with China and Russia, and that unless our DIB is comparatively stronger than deterrent collapses, and war is inevitable. 1 EC Jones falls into this trap, isolating China's tech advancements as a race against the United States and isolating technology like AI as a deciding factor. Jones 24. China's rapidly developing weapons systems diverse before shield building and defense industrial base can produce the software to intelligence and military force beijing improved in artificial intelligence. The justification for the plan is the industrial base is atrophying in context to a competition between the United States and China. Jones 23 with growing competition with use in China, the United States will not prefer war. China to turn future will be different from past. Can illustrate the more useful main system. For the space scenario, their evidence isolates the development of tech supremacy by itself as a deciding factor in the warfighting domain. Weeks at 23 tech and innovation piece of warfighting domain further differentiating the war of domain purpose of technology plays an important role in all of warfighting. 2 arms race and causes the U.S. to impose failed export controls on China. Date 24 the U.S. is facing a dominating invasion restricting innovation without lead by improving export control previous industrial revolution and proceeding no one country monopolies. Innovation will be inflexible to cut China off. The export controls cause invasion of Taiwan turns case powers. Weeks 23 to 1 being called out U.S. policy oriented to keep U.S. attack out of China hand being paid work with Chinese invasion to France supply 90% cutting of ships. This issue of global reliance as state China makes heavily dependent for the Ukraine will attack first last about control of dependence on the U.S. on Taiwan being present Taiwan economy need to ensure protection of Taiwan remains of vital interest. They say attack rates is good. The case of Spain will disprove this. If they try going for offensive realism as an impact turn, that is wrong. 1, it is relevant. It is over simplistic to assert a broader theory while ignoring instances of cooperation. The fact that adversaries like China and Russia did things like sign the non-proliferation treaties, engage in counter-terror initiatives through the UN, and joint pandemic response proves cooperation is possible. 2, offensive realism framing spurs China-Russia no Iran collaboration. Jackson 24. Since China and Russia perceive each content that wishes best with acting concert in Iran and Iran. This is medium punch of the realist IR. You use policy but you cannot believe this debate can have desire that you would want to technical continuing campaign and military rivals with China. They say the app solves no explanation on solves internally. They say the alt sales no warrant in the 2EC. The alt to reject the app's arbiters and logic for a period of arm control of the ocean of you or act is an attacker has been said work with other countries to cooperatively facilitate beneficial AI technology. Solves space battery Kimball 24. A satisfied nuclear will destroy down in front of satellite on Robert Russian nuclear top satellite. Doubling attempts to challenge fundamental norms against nuclear weapons weapons funding nuclear prime allies some weapon development. Knowledge with nuclear missiles obligated ability to design nuclear as implicit device in space. Off time making peace talks about been years coming weeks watching this partial Putin.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. What what can the AF do under your framework inter?
Like, weigh the AF, they get offense off justifications, they can disprove the next.
Can we weigh consequences?
Yeah,
Okay, but you just get like your links and stuff.
off justifications. And you can also
Okay.
weigh offense off
You
justifications.
can win offense off justifications as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So like the 1AR can stand up and say the reading of the 1AC is good because X.
If it's like lined with the reason why the plan is a good idea, yeah.
What does that mean?
Like, justifications are reasonings why the plan is a good idea. For example, the plan is a good idea because it will help the US beat China in the tech race.
So is it justifications of the 1AC or just justifications of the plan or justifications of the reading?
Why the plan is a good idea, which is based in the OIC.
That doesn't make sense.
Why not?
That seems to only we can weigh consequences.
No, but justifications are reasons why your policy is a good idea.
A reason why our policies, it's like reasons why like talking about our policy is a good idea.
You mean like rhetoric?
Like sure.
No, like why like literal mechanism is good, the underlying justifications for that.
Okay, I don't really understand that, but that's fine. What does the alt do?
The alt embraces an arms control instead of an arms race, embracing a paradigm where we cooperate with China and Russia over technology instead of trying to just gain advances perpetually. Which is
Okay,
self-defeating.
so it's like a policy action by the government.
Well, we're not like passing a literal counter plan, we're embracing a paradigm of arms control.
Do you fiat that the U.S. arms controls?
We don't like, okay, we imagine a world where the United States does cooperate with these other countries. If you define that as fiat, sure, but it's not like
Alright.
a narrow counter plan.
Whatever. What does the tech race mean to you?
The United States, China, and Russia are engaged in a competition to build the best military technology, and whoever has the best technology wins global military conflict.
Okay, explain why that's bad. What are your impacts?
Our evidence says that that incentivizes unfettered exploration and innovation in certain technologies. It highlights how that, in the context of artificial intelligence, is uniquely bad because of AI, MP3 integration, and other things.
What are the other things?
It forecloses the ability to use AI for beneficial purposes because
Why?
the government
The
only
private
focuses-
sector could do whatever the heck they want with
because
AI.
the government primarily focuses on using all of their investments and funds for AI in the military sphere.
That doesn't, I don't understand why that stops the private sector from like developing AI that makes everyone happy.
Our evidence isolates that like the justification of the tech race does inevitably lead to a trade-off.
Why?
What do you mean why?
You don't have a warrant. You're just talking about why it makes the government more militaristic with AI, but you haven't provided a warrant for why it stops good private sector development. What is that warrant?
The McGinnis evidence talks about how like government resources focused on issues are pretty often indicative of what the private sector does.
Are pretty often indicative of what the
And
private
embracing a
sector does.
paradigm where the government and private companies cooperate solely for military technology as like, its main goal to prevent extinction causes a trade-off.
What is our deficit?
Actually, we can take a second. Yeah, stop that. That was nonsense. Forgot how like 8:50.
8:49 left?
8:49. So remaining or
Remaining.
no?
Yeah.
The order is the cap K, the equity counterplan, the politics dissad, advantage 1, advantage 2.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, the cap K, the equity counterplan, the politics PA, advantage 1, and advantage 2.
I'm opening it. Okay, we're good.
Right.
The CAPIC is the permutation test of computation. Any theory is a reason to check the argument out of the team, none of the case of floating pigs, but that's arbitrary and bad for negative flexibility. Don't allow from you 1A cross application. Once a contextualized the 2C block choices are predicated off of 2C mess ups at minimum. We get you a response to the equity counterplan. The permutation test of computation. Any theory is a reason to reject the argument out of the team. The Johnson this said can see no internal link and no impact. Any theory is a reason to reject the argument out of the team. Advantage 1. Extend DIB is wrong now. Use top low rankings of study. Assess more consistent individual criteria. Highest military expenditure to socio evidence. We didn't drop the type 1 security. This defense answers it. They say the Jones evidence is more specific, but the but there's all class of workers and armies is there. Cartos 24 to 2, mankind to the British and missiles and fire addition working on the European armies, the world's largest ground force, and CSIS is paid out by the American DAB. They'll say whatever it takes to get Lockheed more money, insert screenshot, offer their DCS, Department of Private Sector Accommodation news about a group both large and small, and that's where there are the worst joke. 24 President of the Defense Security Department and the Center for International Studies. But more warns economy, Chinese investment is fraction of the U.S. private let all. 24 military amplified flawed estimates China's defense spending higher than actually exaggerate estimates going to have to compete with the economy, reducing power parity, lower labor costs, technology investment, productivity, which China will spend 36% use defense willing as spending and military funded high, empirically disproven. We spend more hard on 23 main armor pending budget boosted use T in danger of falling out China next gen system. The notion that you tech solve that radio security challenge duties every gen brings hope of a new miracle technological physical and electronic battlefield in Vietnam to revolution military affairs in the 90s. China's military is not time to tell the US spends 3 times what China spends used also taking advantage of nuclear weapons, aircraft, submarines, and transport aircraft when it comes to emerging tech relative threats are harder to assess given lack of transparency. The best course is not a risk with China extend no impact to tech leadership. Hype historically is turned to disappointment in significant tech takes decades to emerge countervailing effects. China that's all Cheshire. They've conceded all the more sure averages and just reasserted better military capabilities without a more construction factors limit text event would say term output engineers inherently difficult integration complex not every state's capacity high and capability of more constant organization must develop a document for expansion each with their own cultures and interests have to be integrated into the factual condition effectiveness extent and no there's popular opposition to it and as South Asians dependent America our evidence assumes assurance loss in the moon evidence and cross application of the Betsy account plan is wrong it's unwarranted and no one however that line that was cross more warrants one no threshold China continues to increase in the ECS they've been building dozens of years and have committed to naval mod for years but no signs of Southeast proliferation will never that's because it'll never happen troops solve and YE 23 the best guarantees president new measures reinforcement provide reassurance and eventual returns to negative reasons to fear aggression but if the right or proliferation that only gets off through nuclear modernization not software by the 4 churches to challenge the Roman communities to nuclear modernization from any delay funding or technical issues may result in increasing risk and countries that acquired and will never first strike Miller 20 never compelling or sense of a recent use weapons inability to identify targets on the attack as the delivery temperature munition examining domination to be carried out is never threatened states may common cause stand up to intimidation and no so pro public support and UNC don't matter elites are more influential came 24 to spec off nuclear armor and majority so elites do not favor armor while some politicians advocate nuclear armor including UNC opposition prevails among elites whose opinions carry more weight for the national security issues 60% or against and use assurance is best is resilient skip that. Advantage 2, no nuclear cyber attacks and CP systems are made up of numerous overlapping converters that require targeted individual software that is impossible to NC3 specs or secret mass breaches could train chat. You can arrange like interoperability and updates also chat that's all the null evidence was assumes perception and high barriers more warrants continues upgrades new program solve Richard 22 the defense SC3 everyday from cyber strike component architecture airport modernized SC3 with upgraded cryptographic device SC3 continues as living upgrades to cyber arm program precision monitoring mitigating network action competency ability to execute determine the case of hyper range high relative isolation and redundancy ongoing cyber security ensure response CNC enable rapid dissemination and defense cyber ops and ensure readiness and there's aspect consistent versus small and hardware and software 21 in the opinion of senior military leaders the side of the NC3's minimal system is a disconnecting modern is political hardware architecture and their evidence about a hacks and NC3 system which they've read no part saying is an effective like topic they don't solve represent between the cyber technique the working with the second strike capabilities
Go to the K alt to finish the card and read the stuff.
Go to the K alt I'll finish the card in the coming weeks Washington need to partially event and media posting nuclear weapons and order possibly the essential for Washington series of additional measures but space security by needs to around the international passage nuclear arms control framework space and global security depend on it and 2 salts cyber senior adversary when fear loss is expected to be able to launch use of operation fears 3 salts and one Chinese neighbors depend on use action see all the toleration they just with the channels on the run what we need to depend on what we do cut the card there are 4 salts ECG program HMLs will feel and then you program the know that US ACES and added recording of crucial technologies and no impact to ACES NATO interoperability system complexity solve cyber risk that strongly evidence more warrant ACES go to ready for the ACES will be more responsive reduce the impact of law fundamentally shift the calculus asymmetric advantage of average striving to know degradation of investments is only usable once again the system maybe was shorter than increasing non-getting used to just selling and with the creation of orbital debris.
Okay. 8:49. Okay, starting now.
11:06. I need to send a document to DB, but my computer's 11:07. Teams also blocks it. Okay, check your email. And I'll get cards and send.
Okay, I haven't gotten Evan's lock yet, but while we're waiting, the order is advantage 2, then advantage 1, then the cat K, then charming Betsy, then the tech race K. Does anyone need that again?
Okay, I just did the document, I'll send it. Okay, it's sent.
Does everyone have Evan's doc?
Yeah.
Yes? Everyone? Okay. Then is everyone good?
Yeah.
Cyber attacks to a nuclear from eroded nuclear deterrence through second strike jeopardy. That's Repisard. Yes, attacks. They've dropped the U.S. first strike scenario. The one you see read evidence that cyber vulnerabilities are increasing due to lack of contractual flexibility, which locks the DoD into contracts and vendor lock. It's a linear impact. More cyber vulnerabilities lead to more risk of a perceptual impact. The Repisard evidence says that the U.S. will launch nukes because they think they're vulnerable to adversaries because they perceive those cyber vulnerabilities, which means all of their evidence is non-responsive because it does not assume the U.S. perception of the fact that our cyber vulnerabilities are increasing and going to get worse. I only have to answer the Richard evidence is irrelevant. It's not about the acquisition frameworks, which the one I see describes. Those acquisition frameworks prevent consistent upgrades to cyber assets, and their evidence does not talk about things like vendor lock, which is what our internal link is. It talks about some software systems, which is not relevant to the app, and they recontextualize. Evan gets new answers. Concede no ASAS impact. It's irrelevant. The advantage 1. DIB high is irrelevant. Advantage 2 is about cyber vulnerabilities, not spending or the signal of deterrence. But DIB high makes the K inevitable because it means that China will inevitably perceive the U.S. as trying to overtake them in the arms race or the tech race because that's what all their links were contextualized to. Also concede there are all causes to DIB collapse. That means no link or impact because we don't single-handedly assist in the competition with China. We only solve cyber vulnerabilities. The cap K. Drop that the app makes the alt possible. It stops defense monopolies, which their alt evidence says it's necessary to make the transition to socialism or communism possible. That means we get full weight of the impacts on the card, like climate change and the existential risk that a transition away is necessary to solve. No new answers because the 1AR is based on block mistakes. Charming Betsy. The counterplan advanced the plan. That means I only need impact events to win this flow, but they've dropped no spillover. One instance doesn't catalyze Charming Betsy broadly. It's their burden to prove that it spills over. No comedy impact. The card sucks. It's just a bad laundry list. They've dropped offensive realism. It's true. That means pleas for cooperation through comedy fails, and none of their threats are actually existential. The way evidence is answered on the cap K, the app solves sustainability through the plan, and the Norden evidence says that economies solve pollution, which solves the internal link in this card. They also said that they're not going for the K, so they can't pick up their cards or warrants the sustainability evidence because we are extending our 2AC arguments, but they do not get to extend arguments that they didn't make in the block. Okay. On framework, I'm conceding their interpretation. They said we get to weigh reasons why the plan is good. It stops psychological violence for Polish invaders like me. That's Rakanala 24.
students' reaction to violent acts, accessibility, anxiety, PTSD, stress, negative affective states due to attacks on the examiner relationship between students, government, Ukraine, emotional reactions, participants from 16 countries not directly involved, problem-focused strategies possibly affect problem-focused strategies possibly affect mental health and dealing with depression, anxiety, and stress for polls participants. That outweighs. It's a more approximate impact because all your ballot can do is remedy what happened in this round. Yes, we definitely get this. It's a justification for the plan. They were really vague and cross-sected, so you should hold the line. Any attempt to pivot out seeds to Russian dominance, which locks in violence, which we won in discussions of, is good. But the K is wrong. There's no link. I'm not answering any of the actual impacts about AI because they have not explained an internal link. The app is about software and data, and we also conceded that the app does not solve the DIB broadly. That means they have no internal link to the AI arms racing or integration stuff, because even if we solve some cybersecurity, it is not necessarily about artificial intelligence. It is about the existing assets that the DoD is using and hardening those against future attacks or cyber vulnerabilities. They've already not explained the internal link, so they certainly don't get to do that in a 2NR, because then the two-year response would be new. You should not do any extrapolation for them because it's not substantiated by any of their evidence, and the app isn't about tech racing. The stuff about 1AC drones for the tech competition link is irrelevant because we conceded we don't solve it, but it's zero. The drones evidence is about conventional deterrence, the drones evidence is about conventional deterrence. The link is about tech competition, which means this is completely irrelevant since we don't affect it, and it's about the signal of credibility. The arguments about China competition are not about technology, which means they cannot get a link from this. The space supremacy stuff is definitely not about AI. It is about hardening our satellites. It's not about integrating new technologies into them. They've also not read any evidence about the space arms race specifically and the interaction of our tech with it, which means it's irrelevant. But offensive realism also disproves the case. Studies of cooperation prove it. The international system is anarchic and zero sum. That's Yoder. It takes out the K. True cooperation is impossible, and the all will be read as weakness, which collapses deterrence. It's not simplistic. The Yoder is an academic study that finds statistically significant evidence for it. I know we consider our impacts to the DIB proper, but this definitely means they can't solve their own. They can't solve their own impacts because. They can't solve their own impacts because other adversaries will take advantage of it. No AI impact. The newest war games prove it's stabilizing an NC3 systems because AI is biased against wars through data sets. Studies prove it actually decreases war, which straight turns the K. The other AI impact is wrong. Private sector fills in to develop good AI and no AGI impact. And we got 24 AI peer review that's on for that. Discourse ignored societal context of educational countless outcomes. That card was cut at outcomes.
I think we used 340 for the block. Did anyone have anything different? Okay. 620 starting.
Yeah.
advantage 2, then advantage 1.
Cap is before advantage 2. Wait, so the tech K, charming Betsy, cap, advantage 2, advantage 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't. Oh, here it is. Sorry, you said K first, right?
Yeah.
Wait. What's the order again?
Tech K, charming Betsy, cap K, advantage 2, advantage 1.
Okay.
Is everyone good?
Yep.
Chinese invasion of Taiwan causes extinction. It incentivizes China to launch nuclear weapons against the United States, leading to a Pyrrhic war where thousands of people die. Nuclear war also causes radiation, causes extinction of the planet. That was their evidence from the 1AC. They've dropped a link and an independent impact. The dang link from the 1AC says that arms racing via innovation leads to America enacting export controls on China to limit their technological and economic capacity. Those export controls hurt China's economic capacity and leads to an invasion of Taiwan, which was the Riggs evidence. This is completely external to all of their no-link arguments because you're all about AI, because this is specific about innovation. Cross out any new tour extrapolations. This is completely unmitigated, and it straight turns the 1AC scenario because they've dropped the impact defense on case that China does not care about American technological advances. All they care about is their economic capacity, what gets implicated by failed export controls. Anything new in the 2AR is wrong, unjustified, and you need to protect the 2NR because I do not have a 3NR to respond to what it's going to say. But the second framing issue for the case is that they've dropped that the alternative solves case better. Arm control measures mean that China, United States, and Russia are all cooperating together over their weapons and over their regime. That means for the only impact scenario they extend to the cyber stuff, America is not scared of second strike capabilities or vulnerabilities because it's cooperating with these countries and ensure they do not use any weapons in the first place. This was completely weapons in the first place. That means even if you think the alternative doesn't solve case, any risk of our offense has to outweigh. Now move to the framework page. This debate is just a question of our justifications. The negative team is able to get the offense off of the underlying justifications of the affirmative, and it's reciprocal for the app. They say that they get offense off of stopping psychological violence. 3 responses. 1, this is clearly not a reason why the plan is a good idea. When we were referencing underlying justifications, we clarified in cross-examination that things fundamental to plans, like property being a good idea or innovation being a good idea, are reasons why the literal mechanism is a good idea, and they are things that the negative team can fundamentally critique. But second, they have no internal linkage to their offense. Their evidence only says the war in Ukraine has resulted in psychological damage for students, and engagement is good for that. But the 1AR did not explain why a ballot for the affirmative is uniquely key for that impact. The 2AR trying to spin and get new offense from this is completely unjustified. But 3, do not let the 2AR try getting offense off of this, that there's no bright line for interpretation, because under our interpretation, the offense of the underlying reason why the plan is a good idea that was down above, and all the hyperbolic examples that they might give you, like scrolling through the Twitter page of 1AC author or finding a problematic statement of a card mentioning war once, do not rise to the threshold of a link, because it's not a justification why the plan is a good idea. It's barely related to the mechanism of the plan, just like their offense, so the perm would obviously resolve the link. Purifying the threshold of a justification matters because it'll take out all other philosophical competition bad offense, because most GDKs would not have a link under a framework. Move down to the link debate. They could win all of their they are not AI, thus our first few links don't apply, but they completely drop the export controls rank, which is specific to tech innovation, but we can still win the AI link. This is not a linear disad, and our evidence does not be about artificial intelligence. We're critiquing the underlying justifications that the United States needs to get a better innovation and military capacity than other countries. And that paradigm of innovation and that paradigm of getting a content military lead is what leads to unfettered AI exploration. The impact to this link is the artificial intelligence stuff. At least artificial intelligence gaining control of the planet, on-off switches, control of the military, which is external to NC3 integration, but it's just their integration into technology broadly. The new AGI defense is new and should be crossed off of your flow. So external to the Taiwan war stuff, this is also pretty high. They say they don't link to the K because they conceded they don't solve. That's not how it works. When you see made a commitment to the justification, and they have to stick with it. And we only said DIB high now, which is fundamentally distinct. Finally, they see offensive realism disproves case, but they dropped a carded index to offensive realism. The Jackson evidence in the 2C says that sort of paradigm, that competition between China and the United States is zero sum. It makes no sense because because it'll spur Sino-Russian, North Korean cooperation, would lead to nuclear winter. Also, it'll lead to the United States perpetually trying to gain a lead, and other adversaries perpetually trying to match with us would inevitably lead to conflict. But second, it is oversimplistic to say that this proves the one-year reduction in the eternal link as to how, and past cooperation like the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, or how China, Russia, and the United States are cooperating over in the United Nations over counterterror proves that it solves. The charming Betsy Canada, they cannot classify the impact even to the K because they've dropped that the impact here is distinct from that of the K because one of the internal links is about attack and one of the internal links is about trade blocks. Regardless, they made a no trade impact, so this is irrelevant. The K, they do not get offense of the alternative. The 2EC explanation is that the AF is a prerequisite to the Olympics or something Siddiqui says, but we obviously take the alternative, which has alternative measures are necessary, like redistributive policies or carbon taxes, which they do not do. The 1 year did not coherently explain how they solve anything, so this is irrelevant. The advantage 2, the 1 year drops literally every single card read in the 1 year about why there are not going to be any cyber attacks. Not the 2 year stand up and research stuff because 200 shorts to forget it for 1 year about sets. They extend the dollar card, it was an answer for 2 stage breaches, countermeasures, like data interoperability, updates, and inherent entity complexity check. They've not isolated a threshold for perception or going to a cyber extremely strong because of all of the warrants above. Advantage 1, it does not matter if the IB is strong now because our argument is that cooperation between China and Russia checks the impacts and the links of the K. This does not disprove the links because we can have a strong military, it just can't be a race with other countries.
Perhaps
427.
starting now.
Just to critique.
Thank you.
Is everyone good?
Yeah, have fun.
Cyber attacks that way, they thought that the U.S. would first strike at the mere perception of vulnerabilities in NC3 systems, which means that all the cooperation stuff is inevitable because they perceive that even if they perceive that there's one adversary that wants to try to disrupt NC3 systems, they'd instantly go nuclear, which obviously outweighs. All evidence is irrelevant. Vivi read an indite to it in the 1ER and said that it doesn't matter because it's not about the perception of vulnerabilities. The Repusar impact card in the 1EC is great. It says that the mere perception of vulnerabilities is what triggers a link, not the actual cyber attacks themselves. So even if they win, that adversaries might in reality have no motive to actually cyber attack, that doesn't matter because our evidence says that the mere perception that someone does would mean that they would obviously go to war. Even if the U.S. tries to cooperate with other countries, that doesn't preclude one person within the government from thinking that someone might be out to get us. And they also didn't explain the alt at all. It was just a vague explanation of some global co-op thing, which means that you don't give them any explanation of the U.S. turns nice to everyone and suddenly doesn't launch a nuclear first strike. They say complexity checks. That's wrong. That's about complexity. It's about complexity of the NC3 systems themselves, but that doesn't matter because our evidence says that they're becoming more and more vulnerable by the day. The Nunez evidence says that new technology like AI and others will allow easy access for adversaries to try to get into those NC3 systems and meddle with them, which means that cooperation, which means that there are new ways to bypass any complexity which the U.S. perceives, but they can win this complexity thing and we still get full weight of our impact because the U.S. will still think that someone is out to get them, especially with offensive realism, which I'll explain later. Go to the tech. Oh, that also takes out any terms case analysis because it means it's about perception solely, which the app solves through deterrence. Go to the K. I'll start on the link framing issue. They were taken out by 1ER concession. Phoebe conceded the DIV is high now, which means the links are all non-unique and there's no chance the plan is bad for them. We also conceded that all causes decline, which means even if they want to link to the app, decline is inevitable even in that world, so there's obviously no impact. Going for only one link is a big problem for them because we made impact defense and link defense for that link that they dropped. First, extend link defense. Export control link is also about AI, which is why Phoebe didn't answer it by name. Bellarmine explicitly conceded that the plan does nothing with artificial intelligence, so this cannot win them the round. The evidence says artificial intelligence, infusion of AI, and from AI, which obviously means that the export control policies are focused solely on AI. Yes, we give this re-highlighting because they recontextualized this in a new manner in the 2NR, and we lumped it together with AI because that was what all of their links was about. But second, impact defense. One, drop the AI integration into NC3 systems is good and stops war because AI datasets are biased against conducting launches. Bellarmine did not extend any of their AI integration bad cards, they just asserted it, which means that you obviously give us our study because it's great from 2024 and 2024 and says that AI datasets are biased against conducting launches because their data sets are biased against war because it's a rare occurrence. And even with cooperation, humans are rational and prone to miscalc, which means that nuclear launches are inevitable. This impact turns the entire K because it means that under the system of quote-unquote co-op, it's inevitable that war happens. Second, they dropped that the private sector solves AI broadly. They'll align it and prevent it from eating humanity. This was explained in cross-text right in the 1ER and dropped in the 2NR so you can safely check out and there being no impact to the link. Yes, they get links to the plan's justifications, but those only matter insofar as they have an impact. Explaining the concessions above means even if the plan is bad rhetoric, that can spill over broadly because decline of the DIV is inevitable. They say the impact is war with Taiwan. This is wrong because of offensive realism. Studies of cooperation prove it. The international system is anarchic and zero sum. That's the Yoder evidence. Their indite of offensive realism isn't an indite. It's merely an explanation for what happens when you use offensive realism. Our Yoder card is great. It's a statistical studies and found that people have very irrationally pessimistic beliefs and believe that other countries are out to get them, which is also an indite to the alt because it means that even if they fiat or whatever, that the U.S. tries to cooperate with other countries will believe that the U.S. is trying to undermine them. It's great. It says there's a remarkable statistically significant effect of this pessimistic belief, which obviously takes out the alt, and it also takes out the link. It means that China won't perceive export controls as escalatory, but merely a way of the U.S. to try to achieve deterrence parity in the Taiwan Strait. Vivi clearly said that even if we consider conceding the DIV is down, we're not conceding this theory of deterrence, which means that the export controls would merely be a way for the U.S. to try to do better. They say offensive realism causes cooperation and is disproved by the NPT and U.S. cooperating with China. Yes, cooperation is possible with offensive realism, but it's only possible when each side totally distrusts one another and feels that cooperation is the only way for both of them to get ahead. That obviously wouldn't happen under the critique because the U.S. would look weak and conciliatory, which means other adversaries would decide not to do anything with with the cooperation whatsoever, and instead try to meddle with the U.S. cyber attack, which causes, which obviously causes their impact. They say it pushes North Korea and Taiwan and China, or North Korea and China and Russia together. That's irrelevant because that's an indictment to the. That means that offensive realism itself is bad, but it's not a reason why it's not true. So even if you think it's offensive realism as a theory might cause bad effects in the real world, they haven't contested that it's true in reality, which means that obviously the app is the only thing that can shore up cyber attacks, and NC3 integration is good, which impacts Prince K. Debate.
Card doc?
We all want a card doc?
Yes, please.
I saw her come out, huh?
A+ flowing from
Yes,
the-
I got to meet her a few tournaments ago, so.
Mia's little brother was also
Oh, really?
very cute. They were both very intently for her.
What did they go for?
Considered, no, they, what are the one cards?
What was the 2 hour?
This tech.
It's not judge's lunch anymore.
It's not, they're
Yeah, just go right in. It's on the next floor up. It's either the very end of the hall this way or the end of the hall
This way.
This way.
that way?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, kids are,
Like toward the cafeteria, but not, don't leave the building.
thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to like increase the font of the place where it
No,
says
no,
it?
I'm good. I just wanted to double check that I was looking at the right part.
Okay.
I appreciate your help. Yes, I can do my font size.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Oh, you just sent it, okay, I thought. Okay,
It's supposed to be like sweating,
sweating.
but I don't think it comes across very well in emoji format.
And your second message is fine, good. Is that decision in here?
That one, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think for second space.
GBF1.
Huh?
GBF1.
That's good.
Okay, just so you know, we thought would he'll come along and verify on it, but you're
2-1 for the affirmative. I sat. I agree with the 2 and R's line that the affirmative has not established the threshold that is necessary for this perception argument. Yes, your impact evidence speaks to like if they thought that there was a decline in the capability vis-a-vis cyber compared to other countries, that would potentially lead to them taking kind of a first strike approach to secure that vulnerability. I do not think your link evidence ever gets to the threshold to say that they think there would be a vulnerability that would lead them to do that. The negative impact evidence is the only one speaking to the question of capability here. NC3 hacking is difficult, it would be hard to pull off. There's not necessarily an adversary that we know that would be capable of doing so. So I just don't really understand like what the technical threshold would be that the DoD would have to identify to think that there was a threat and then launch a first strike. So I actually think the risk of the advantage is quite low based on the lack of a link there. Your evidence obviously says there is cyber vulnerability if vendor locking continues. I don't really know why that is true if the technical component of that is difficult for someone else to do. Comparing these 2 statements I think could have tilted me either way by affirmative or negative. Admittedly the 2 and R doesn't say a lot here, but also I don't really think the 1AR answered this argument from the negative at all, so I kind of concluded with the negative on that issue. I think the risk of the cyber impact is quite low, so from there, it was just, is the negative going to kind of win 2 things that controls my decision for them? Number 1 is, do I think the question of yes, no, is the app about AI all that relevant? And I ultimately conclude 2 things for the negative here. Number 1 is I'm really not sure that it is. Like I get the 2AR re-highlighting of this evidence that says it is about AI, but the negative consistently throughout the debate is explaining that it's not a critique of the idea of AI, it is a critique of the idea of viewing our arms race, viewing competition with China, Russia, etc. as an arms race, and then that leads to the dangerous development AI and or the Chinese invasion of Taiwan because we impose export controls on them. The export control stuff is certainly like very specific to artificial intelligence. I'm not sure how much of that is like in the 2AR or the 1AR to be honest with you, but I don't know, like it's about AI, but I honestly think that like the evidence is about the innovation frame within AI. I mean that's literally, the article title is about the problem of the innovation frame. I think the myth of innovation or something like that is what it is titled in the AI, in the article. It's about artificial intelligence, but whatever. I don't think it's like a 100% Slayer thing. But 2 things we conclude, like even if it's about AI, there's still somewhat of a link for me. Number 1 is your div advantage is about the development of industrial technology. It explicitly mentions artificial intelligence 3 places and one of the 1AC pieces of evidence. Like obviously, I think maybe the 2 and R should say something about this, but I just from the beginning didn't think the app no link of like we don't do AI. It's not about tech. It's just about div development. Like that to me is kind of nonsense. In that like what would the div matter if it wasn't for developing the new technology? The second thing, the 2AR literally has a line when extending the cyber impact that the problem is that adversaries are developing new AI technology that would increase their ability to hack our cyber systems. And that, like, to me is like, okay, this is exactly what they are criticizing, is this frame that there is a looming AI threat out there that means that we need to develop new technology under that. So I think that there is somewhat of a risk of a link to this impact. The rest of it is conceded, so very large impact with threat. Yes, no, is AI good? Honestly, not all that relevant for me. Even if AI integration in general is good, stabilizing, whatever, the like application to say that means it would have X impact that outweighs the China export control scenario or would prevent the China export control scenario never happens from the affirmative. So AI integration could vaguely be good for all I care, but if we still do export controls and cause Chinese invasion of Taiwan, I don't necessarily care about that given the lack of a concrete impact of that scenario. Finally is the question of the alternative yes, no realism. I honestly, I don't know. It's not 100% either way for me. The app evidence is good in terms of like the study says people are pessimistic and that would coincide with the beliefs of offensive realism. I don't really understand like how to take that study that has been read and mean that the alternative like fails 100% or anything like that. The negative has fiated that the United States approached the arms control paradigm. So for me, it's like the 2NR line that says the alternative solves the affirmative better, I think is just true given that like even if realism is true in the abstract, the fiated alternative has the United States not do that, not have a competition, and try to do arms control. So I don't really understand why the United States, even if I granted the cyber impact, would try to invade Taiwan or any other thing, start a first strike because we think our deterrent has been eroded by lack of cyber capability if we are approaching things through an arms control defensive paradigm. Secondarily, like, I don't know, I think the negative also has a couple of things going for them on this realism debate that really, like, one, just kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy argument that viewing it through this means that ultimately you create the type of alliance of Russia, China, and North Korea that you are trying to prevent and causes the conflict to happen. Second, I think the negative examples are good. Like, that was pretty powerful for me. 2NC and 2NR has uncontested example about arms control has happened through non-proliferation treaty. Russia, China cooperated there, and they've done so in the United Nations over counterterrorism. So, like, these two things, like, both sides are winning an argument here. These should be weighed against one another by both sides. Neither side is really doing that. So I ultimately concluded, like, I'm not confident that the alternative resolves the link or, you know, the entirety of the affirmative, but I feel like there's a shot. I don't feel like there's much of an impact to the affirmative, so I thought it was try or die and egg for the alt to avoid export controls impact.
Go for it.
Okay. I thought the app cyber impact outweighs the negs export controls and the AI impact. I started on offensive realism because I think if the app is right, it takes out alt solvency because it would just mean that the alternative would be US unilateral attempts at cooperation, but without reciprocation. I think this 1AC Yoga card is pretty good. It definitely cites studies. It says that even if you start with trust, most of the time, even if you start with trust, most participants, any hint of uncertainty causes them to default to behavior that is congruent with offensive realism. I think by comparison, the next Jackson card is just not anywhere nearly as good. It is not really an indict of offensive realism. It is a pretty short snippet, and it just says that regardless of whether you believe in a balance of power or a balance of threats to you, U.S. actions won't ever get like a Russia, China, and NATO Iran to back down. It's not the same thing as saying that U.S. inaction or cooperation causes them to back down. Like, it's not a reverse causal statement. Plus, if the app doesn't need them back down when its impact doesn't matter, because the app's argument is not that if you do the app, it causes them back down. It's that because they will never back down, the U.S. has to maintain its edge. Their argument isn't that in the world of the app they back down. Right? So it doesn't disagree with this card. Like, I don't pull up this article, it's equally likely that the very next paragraph is like, the thinking that you take incremental action by doing some tech restrictions would get them to back down is wrong. Instead, we should just realize that they don't back down. Like, I don't know if the next paragraph is like, if offensive realism is true, U.S. action is insufficient, or if offensive realism is bad. If offensive realism is bad or wrong, cut the next paragraph. It's like, this is an incorrect view of the world. It's possible for them to not get into an alliance. They're not predestined to an alliance if the U.S. behaves X, Y, Z ways. But it's just like, it's not a reverse causal part. It's cut so suspiciously short that I'm more likely to conclude it's probably the other way, but I also don't want to pull the other poll because I don't want to Google things that no one's done to read. In any event, I think if the app wins offensive realism is true, it means the alternative most likely is not in China or Russia reciprocation, but instead cause them to take advantage of the situation, blah, 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 blah. I think throughout the debate, you're like, there's no explicit answer to the alternative. I thought this was the explicit answer to the alternative. It is not flagged as like, alt to take out offensive realism, but if they win offensive realism, just take out the thesis of cooperation, which is what the thesis of the alternative is. I think the 2NR is right, but the 1AR does not have an explicit answer. It says like 2NC export controls Taiwan add-on impact, and it probably should. Like, as the 2NC is being read, I'm highlighting it on my flows, like, well, this will be a add-on impact. But I think the neg needs an alternative for this to be offense. This evidence is about restrictions on semiconductor exports to China, which already exists now. That's not me doing work. The card is like, there's restrictions on visas for scientists, there's restrictions on chips, etc. So it's described a situation that is already disclosed. It is described that particular situation is not unique. It could still be neg offense, but it's only neg offense if the alternative is a unique discount plan that backs out those existing restrictions, and then that backing out restrictions causes China or Russia to reciprocate. But they are not a thing that the app uniquely causes, right? It's not a case term, because there's not a card. It's like the app as a mandate or a condition of doing the app has to do additional semiconductor restrictions, just like the app operates in a worldview which would also be compatible with existing semiconductor restrictions, we think all that is bad, to all would undo all those things. So that's why I started with offensive realism, because even if they not had made explicit answers to this in the 1AR, if they were decisively winning the offensive realism stuff, and there's no alternative, it does not matter if the worldview of the app causes this impact, because it's like inevitable, not anything that the voting negative can solve. By comparison, I think the Asper's kind of like cyber perception attack, it is not 100%. I think it's high enough to win, given the bar is pretty low at this point. If I think the alternative cannot get China or Russia to reciprocate, the 1AC Nunez evidence says that there are existing weaknesses in U.S. cyber defense now. This 1AC Rapistar card, I mean, it says enough to kind of let the 1AR and 2AR explanation be fine, which is that it does say preemptive launches are possible at the mere perception of the erosion of second strike deterrent capability. I think your 1NC UNOL evidence is good and can be right that it would be really logistically difficult to pull off an NC3 attack, but it does not fully answer the advantage if the US knows it's vulnerable now because of software problems, i.e. they've read more recent evidence that establishes uniqueness, that there are US software problems and the US perceives those software problems. So all these things can be simultaneously true, that it would be really difficult logistically to pull off an attack, and the US thinks it's really vulnerable, but that would just mean that the US thinks the bar is lower for a successful cyber attack, even if it would be normally infeasible. So like this provides some defense, but it cannot, I don't think, possibly take out the entire advantage, because even if all these things are true, there's still some possibility that given the US's particular circumstances with weak cyber situation, et cetera, that there would still be a preemptive attack at some point in the future. And so, you know, the risk advantage is not 100. I just didn't think it was like 0 or even 1%. I thought it was low, but it's like more than good enough given, I don't know how voting negative solves semiconductor shortages. Or more importantly, I guess voting negative solves semiconductor like restrictions, but I don't know how that causes China to back down. I did not think too hard about the AGI portion of the critique for 2 reasons. The first is that I'm not really sure if there's much of a link here, given that the 1AR has a really big no link push, and the 2NR, the top of the 2NR's choice is like, I'm going for the export control thing because I think they dropped it, my impact calculus is there. When it gets AGI, it's sort of half-heartedly like asserting a link and then talk about the impact. I'm not sure if you overcome their argument that there's just not a link to it. More importantly, offensive realism, if it answers the alternative, I think this offense also requires an alternative, because it would have to be that if the US backs off of AI like racing, that China or Russia would do the same thing. If I'm skeptical of the alt for export control reasons, I would also be skeptical of the alt for solving AGI reasons. The second is just, given this is not the top of the 2NR, there's not like the equivalent level of impact out for this, I'm not sure why this impact would matter. There's no impact defense in NC3s. Everyone agrees that whether it's Taiwan invasion or NC3 preemptive strike, that those attacks to nuclear radiation, extinction, etc. This impact you described is like some AGI impact in the future. I don't know if I should care because like time frame comes first. So it just seems like this is a kind of loose impact that you don't seem to really access via link, doesn't really seem to access. I don't know how to weigh versus a tangible risk of an NC3 impact, and I think almost no risk of this ability to solve this export controls impact.
Yeah, I got to the same place. I started in a little bit different of a spot. I started by assessing, is there any case impact, and I determined that there was a case impact. It is not large, but I agree it is in the non-zero possibility range, that an NC3 attack is possible, even if it is not the likeliest of scenarios. Then I assessed the offensive realism question. I think that the app wins offensive realism is true. I think the 1AR and the 2AR framing on this is that your evidence says that it might be bad, but not that it's not what countries use to guide their decisions. When I read the evidence, I feel like that's relatively accurate in its description of your evidence. So I think that means the alternative does not solve the likelihood that other countries sort of, think that the U.S. is weak and sort of pocket the concession when we stop engaging in attempts to pursue technological dominance and thus don't engage in effective arms control. So I think a small risk of cyber attacks outweighs the chances that pursuing military dominance causes war with Taiwan versus via export controls. The Taiwan link being about AI, I think, is sort of interesting. I would also prefer a specific reference to that in the 1AR, although I do agree that the arguments you've made about offensive realism do answer that argument. But I do also agree with Yaya that the evidence says that those export controls are sort of happening in the status quo, and I'm not sure how they're necessarily affected by the plan. I thought overall this was a really enjoyable debate. I think I like the idea of the strategy. I think it's a solid one and was implemented pretty well at the beginning of the debate. I'm not sure I agree with the decision to only go for the Taiwan impact, or sorry, the Taiwan, link impact scenario. I can see why that cleans things up a little bit for the 2NR, and I get the appeal. But in this case, it just meant that so much was stacked on a relatively underutilized part of the debate compared to the alternative. And so I would love to see, why the U.S., more discussion of how the arms control takes place and why, avoiding export controls would do that. I'm like, if you think the alternative just like fiat, no export controls, that would be interesting. I'm not totally sure how you would answer that question. Does it eliminates existing export controls on all technology? I'm not sure. But that would be something that I would need to see discussed in order to understand how the alternative interacts with Taiwan specifically.
I thought this 200 choice made sense in the sense that the 1AR has extended a bunch of weird things you have to deal with. This is a hard 200 deal because it's like suddenly a random reverse fiat K they have to deal with about Polish waivers, like where's this? They've gone for a thing on cap that is like nonsensical but requires an answer. Like you've not extended the alt, and they need an alt to whatever, we don't need to talk about that. So I think you have to clean up the debate and get out of lots of stuff. And you probably saw this export control thing as the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
It's a little shocking to me that given this is the 2NC that there aren't longer or better offensive realism wrong cards, because this is how you win or lose this debate. If they win offensive realism is factually true, the entire cake goes away. If you win it as wrong, almost none of their answers make sense. The 1AC doesn't make sense. And so you either need longer cards, better cards. It's just crazy to me that at the end of this debate, it's like they've started the 1AC with this Yoder card, and by the end you just have this one really short Jackson card that I think is a requirement to win almost everything you need on this critique. You just need better evidence. I think if you have that, and lots of other things get unlocked. The other really weird potential path that I think the 2AR realized this might happen and kind of closed it, but the 2NR didn't do this, so I wasn't willing to do it, is the 1AR is the only impact we're going, we don't care about Russia or Chinese behavior. The only impact we're going for is that the US might irrationally act out because it is insecure. That's the only part of the act we're going for. The alternative is just the US, I guess we fiat every policymaker is cooperative, right? They can win offensive realism true for everyone else. If what would happen if the 2NR was the only impact they've gone for on case is the US would irrationally attack. You should view the alt through the lens of basically an object fiat counterplan, but they never said object fiat. Instead, they willingly said the only impact we're going for is US lash out. The alternative obviously would not have US lash out because the US would certainly act in ways that are cooperative, so it just wouldn't lash out. We'd all be mad because we're well, that's object fiat, but they didn't say object fiat earlier, and they knowingly in the 1AR, knowing that the alternative is US cooperation, said the only impact we're going to go for is US might act aggressively. We just fiat through the US doesn't act aggressively. For certain, at that point, the alternative solves the only impact on case, right? So you zero the app. The 2AR would have to say, we didn't see this coming, allow new 2AR object fiat. I don't know, I would hate object fiat, but the 1AR, knowing what the alt is, decided to go for a part of the app that is only about US behavior and not other country behavior, so.
If you were making that argument, I would be very explicit in saying, tracing what Yaya just said, which was the 1AR made a choice to only go for something that was US, based. This is the opportunity cost of that choice is that our alternative makes that go away.
But honestly, I'm going to do it for you because you didn't do it. And also, I think the 2AR at one point was just in case you might be confused, they can't feed any one person who might feel insecure. So you kind of saw that this might be something. So obviously, I don't want to do that. But I thought that was a dangerous position to be in after the 1AR.
If we had a link and impact attached to solely US action, do you think that'd be able to circumvent the offensive realism debate? AI NC3 integration in the United States, for example.
Better.
Well, then it becomes a framework computation debate. It's still unclear to me if the app directly causes AI. The worldview of the app is compatible with that. Presumably, voting negative solves it because the alternative is a massive advantage counterplan that would do a bunch of things beyond the app, including undoing all that stuff.
Yeah.
They would probably get to permute it unless you, I guess, when a framework interpret, they don't get to permute it. So it becomes really a framework debate about whether they get to permute an alternative that undoes a bunch of stuff that the app
And you thought it
does
was,
the worldview of the app necessitate those things, or just the ones tied to the plan, I think would be the discussion.
so do you think it's permutable because the cards are about AI and not like innovation generally, and the app doesn't do AI, or?
Well, some of that unless you have uniqueness evidence that is not being integrated now. It seems like that is being integrated now because there's largely a worldview that's like trying to rush it as a threat, right? So the app is part of that worldview, but just rejecting the app doesn't undo the integration. You'd have to be like vote neg with fiat through cooperation across the board, including undoing all that stuff. But the question is, does the app also get to permute that? Because it's not the mandate of the app is not to do that.
Okay.
So then it's a framework. It's like a philosophical competition debate, but.
Which you seem excited to have, like I don't
You
think
seem-
that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think it all makes sense.
For the cyber thing, would the problem have been solved by just extending like the adversarial like adversarial cyber attack scenario as well, or like part of the cyber scenario instead of
you
just
need,
US?
You need an impact that's not just that they can't fiat out of.
Yeah.
Cause in cross-checks, it's pretty clear that they like fiat that the United States government changes its perspective on what we're going to pursue. And whether, we use the word fiat or not, that's what they're defending. And so you have to go for an impact that another country is gonna cause that problem. And I think that you allude to this and sort of talk around it in some interesting ways. But it would be nice if that was explicit, and there was like a card you're pointing to in the 1AR.
Yeah.
The US gets anxious and overreacts is a really good scenario for disads. It is a less good scenario for critiques when they are fiating that the US just like doesn't do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I thought the 2NR did make the argument that the alt solves the US lash out scenario. This is the second argument on the K in the 2NR, I thought. So I think it's necessary. And also think about y'all are making a smart calculation in the 2AC that just we'll use the AF to answer this K. But think about then, as Yaya has already said, the thesis of your answer to this K is adversaries exist and want to destroy us, and thus the impact that you extend needs to be congruent with that theory of IR.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What do you think what are some cards that the 2AC could have, you think, read to maybe make this a little bit easier on the 1AR and the 2AR on the K?
I just think a couple of cards that says competition is good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a competitive world out there and we should win it. And then B, I was kind of thinking the Reagan, Cold War, peace through deterrence, if we've got a strong div, then